You built the business. Now, build the man. This is the Ben Price Experience.
Will Polston, thank you for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So first question I have for every guest is, who are you and why are you here?
What a question. So I suppose, who am I? At a high level, my name is Will Polston, and I am someone who is driven. I am someone who is inspired. I am someone who is focused on helping or enabling people to unlock their next level of potential, performance, and purpose. And I believe that's ultimately one of the reasons why I'm here, is to get people to be able to unlock their next level of potential, performance, and purpose, because that enables them to, in my opinion, live more of the life that they want to be living.
And how did you find your way into this space, into this work?
So short version is, I grew up with a belief that money equaled happiness. I went off on a tangent to make as much money as I could as early as I could, and then had a big realization 13 years ago now that my real driver was nothing to do with money. It was something much deeper than that. And from then on, I've just been obsessed with anything to do with human awareness, human potential, human behavior. What that specifically was actually a personal development event. And there was a story told by the person at the event, which the event was with a guy called Tony Robbins. And he shared a story which is known as the Thanksgiving story. It's kind of how he formed effectively what is now Basket Brigade, but it acted as the perfect metaphor to do something to do with my dad. And then from then on, I've just been obsessed with anything to do with human awareness, human potential, human behavior. And I've been doing it since. I've had the coaching business now 10 years, and it's had its different forms, but yeah, that's where we're up to now.
What was that with your dad?
So the reality of my sort of perception at the time was he hated his job. He left the house at 5 a.m, come home at 7, 8 o'clock at night. He'd bring the stress and frustration of work home with him. And he was one of those people that when he walked in the room, you could just sense the tension. And I was very young at the time. So this is kind of probably when I was about 10. And then one day he quit his business to set up a business with one of my uncles, two very wealthy uncles. And that business never got started. Dad then went into what we would describe now as experiencing feelings of depression. And then I kind of made a connection that Uncle Mark, billionaire, really happy. Uncle Steve, multi-millionaire, really happy. Dad, when he worked in London, stressed and frustrated, but now doesn't have a job, doesn't leave the house. He's unhappier than he's ever been. So it's obvious money equals happiness. So that was the sort of connection that I made at about 10 years old. Went off on that tangent to make as much money as I could, as early as I could, did a K at that, and then had that big realization 13 years ago. So yeah, that's kind of the short version of what happened at that time.
Right. So 13 years ago, you had you went to the Tony Robbins seminar.
Yeah.
And then you had the realization, right?
Yeah.
And so where did you go from there then? Did you go straight into coaching, or did you?
So what the moment of what happened, so I call it my lightning moment, because bam, it just hit me. I cried my eyes out for about 15 minutes, was that I made a decision in that moment. I wanted to help people achieve what it was that they were capable of, and not have to go through the suffering and the pain that arguably my dad had kind of gone through, and not just him, but me and my family and a bunch of other people. So that was the decision that was made in that moment. And I remember going home, sitting in front of my family on the Sunday night saying, this is what I'm going to do, and these are my ambitions. And I remember registering a company and Company's House. And I remember the next day going to the bank and opening up a company bank account and doing that. Then I did nothing. I said, well, I'll do it when I'm successful. You know, when I've done this, then I'll be able to get going. When I've moved forward, then I can really start doing this. I did leave the city. So at the time I was running a division of a stock brokerage in London. I did leave that. I set up a renewable energy business. We grew that from a standing start to having about 85 staff in 18 months, so growing really quickly. And then that business failed. And then I went away on holiday, and just before the holiday, I realized I'm still just chasing the money. Why am I still just chasing the money? And it was when I came back from that I actually started. So how it actually came about was I was reading a book, and I was at the pool, and I was reading a book called The Hero by Mastin Kipp. And there was a part in the book where he spoke about how he used to post motivational quotes on Twitter every day. And one day he got retweeted by Kim Kardashian and he went from 1,000 followers to 10,000 followers overnight. And I thought, I just need to start. It was another sort of lightning moment, cried and thought, Will, you can just start. So I did. I came home. I started posting a quote a day on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. After a week, I thought, Will, you idiot. Some people don't go on social media in the morning, so you should post one in the afternoon as well. So I posted 2 a day. A week after that, I created my first website. A week after that, I posted my first blog. And then 3 months after that, I had a 10,000 strong social media following. So that was kind of the catalyst journey to build a bit of an audience. And then the 4th month, I then hosted my first ever event. It was called the Unlock Your Potential Discovery Evening. So I ran the first of that event. And then if we fast forward sort of 10 years from then, now we've run over 500 events, thousands of people that have attended them in their various different forms all over the UK. And yeah, that's kind of how it all started.
Amazing. What are some of the challenges that you've had along the way? Because it sounds like it's been amazing, but I'm sure there's been some ups and downs.
So challenges, what challenges should we talk? So in just the journey in general, or just in the terms of the coaching part of the business?
Yeah, let's go for the coaching part of the business.
Okay, so losing everything, being at one point over 300k in personal debt, that wasn't ideal.
Wow.
The challenge of having to face. So I think that building any business, in my opinion, is the ultimate personal development experience. It tests every area of your life. You get challenged in ways that I believe you don't get challenged in other areas. It's literally impacting all 7 areas of life. And then I think from my perspective, there's also an element of being in the coaching space, whichever way you want to wrap it up. There's an element of perception that you operate in a certain way, you don't have challenges and you don't have those things, which of course you do. So then being able to experience the loneliness of that and the impact that can have has definitely been testing. So yeah, there'd be a few of the moments. I think that there's been some very, very humbling times, and I don't think this is just for anyone that's a coach, but it can be for anyone that's in business, that there's been times when things really haven't gone the way that people intend it to go, and you really have to dig deep. I call them fuck it moments. So a fuck it moment for me is when I have to do something I really don't want to do. So I have to pick up that phone and call someone and deliver news I don't want to deliver, or I have to do something I really don't want to do, but it's sort of big deep breath in, fuck it, and let's do it anyway. So there's been quite a number of those that have happened throughout the time. But yeah, that's a few of them.
A few fuck it moments. How do you think, have you ever reflected on your own, during your journey, have you reflected on what it means to be a man and masculinity and how that's played into all of the challenges that you've had?
So it's a really interesting one. I think that, so I grew up playing rugby since I was 4, ice hockey since I was 8. They're very, I would argue, skill in sports. There's a lot of lad culture. I ran a division of a stock brokerage, so the worlds that I was in, I was around a lot of very masculine men. I have definitely reflected. I think that there's been a lot of, if I look back at me in my younger years, there was a lot of the things I did, and probably even the things that I said, actually came from a place of insecurity. So I've reflected on that and kind of seen that there's a lot of things that I did early on that I think were reflective of the environments that I was in, and also what was normal. What was normal when you're a 20-something-year-old lad playing rugby, playing ice hockey, working in London. Now I look back and go, would I make those same choices now? Absolutely not. There's things that I would have said even just 3 years ago that I don't say now, just because I see it now for what it, I suppose the real reason, I suppose there's a level of awareness now that I have around the reasons why I was saying or doing certain things that I don't have a need to do now. And I think a lot of that actually boiled down to significance. There was a lot of things that I was doing because I perceived that it gave me a level of significance that actually, how much of that significance was born out of insecurity? Probably quite a lot of it. So yeah, I think yes is the short answer. I think I've reflected and noticed on those things.
So it's insecurity, but also like an immaturity. Is that what you're talking about? You feel like you've obviously matured a bit on your journey.
Yeah, look, I think if anybody's getting older and they're not maturing, then something's going on. But so yeah, I definitely think that there's a component of that. One of the things I've often reflected on is just take banter. So at
Yeah.
what point does banter become bullying? So if
Mm.
I look back over the years of playing team sport and whatnot, I look back, well, how much of that was banter and how much of that was bullying? Where's the line? And I still don't know the answer to that, because sometimes I think it's not necessarily about what's being said or even the intention of what's being said. It's to do with the place that the person is in that is receiving it. So, yeah, I'm a big believer that the message is always determined by the receiver, and that can be uh, empowering and disempowering at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, I read recently that the two most damaging things, or the things that men fear the most, is humiliation and rejection.
Yeah,
Rejection's kind of an obvious one. Most people fear, I
yeah.
think,
I
rejection.
I think it's is that so. Is that for me? Yeah, definitely. I've done a lot of psychometrics and profile and personality profiling and all these wonderful things, and that's definitely the case for me. There's an element of wanting to see how I show up, how I'm perceived. Do I think that is exclusively to men? Though I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I imagine there's
No, no, sure.
a lot
Yeah, yeah.
of women that would do the same.
Yes. Yeah, yeah. I think it's just maybe it's interesting that talking about banter, because it is quite a thing that happens within men more than women, isn't it? I would say, especially in sports teams.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't comment with. I can assume, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I can't say for sure. But I know that there's definitely the case. So, but then there's other times when the humiliation the very thing that gives people the significance. So I can think of specific friends of mine that are the equivalent of being a class clown,
Yes.
and actually their humiliation is the very thing that gives them their significance. So what one person might deem as, oh my god, that's humiliating, for them they go, oh no, I'm the life and soul of the party. So yeah, it's an
Mm.
interesting thing, but I can definitely say that has and still is to some degree the case for me, for sure.
Yeah, yeah. I worked with a guy who he actually showed up to one of the men's camps, and he sort of showed up and basically said to everyone, "I'm the jester here. You can laugh at me." And I was like, "Well, we're not going to do that." He was like, "What?" You know, he didn't say those particular words, but it was just interesting how some people have this like jester quality about, not quality even, just like energy, I guess, around them. Yeah, cool. Anyway, okay, so we also want to talk about your book, which is North Star Thinking. So can you tell us a little bit about what is North Star Thinking, and why do we need to be aware of that?
So I believe that people will have a far more fulfilled, inspired, energizing life if they live their North Star, which then begs the question, well, what's a North Star? So I believe a North Star is a mission in life that you never achieve. So what's the thing that you're willing to pursue that inspires you? If we think back to ancient wisdom, the Stoics had the telos. Napoleon Hill spoke about the chief aim. You've got people like Robert Greene talking about planning to the end. You've got Napoleon Hill spoke about beginning with the end in mind. They've all spoke about thinking about long term. And certainly in my experience, I was a victim of what I call when then syndrome. So when I achieve this, then I'll be okay. When I get there, then I'll be all right. When I get to this, then I'll be at peace. And that for me just was not a great experience, because I would get to there, wherever there was, and then realize, oh, is this it? Whereas the idea of having a life mission that you accept you're never going to achieve, it means you can continually be focused, you can continually pursue something. Does that mean that you don't have goals? No, not at all. You still have goals. They're effectively the stepping stones along the way, and they're the checkpoints, if you want to call them that, so you can still get directionally correct. But it isn't, you're not doing everything for those. They are the byproduct of living your North Star. And when you tap into your North Star, you'll be more energized, you'll be more inspired, you can have a greater impact. Because I also believe that any one person's North Star not only benefits them, but benefits their family, their friends, their community, society, humanity, the universe. It has a ripple effect. And that's essentially what the whole concept of North Star thinking is around. What is getting clear on what yours is and then living it congruently.
How do you suggest people go about getting clear on what that is for them?
So there's 5 ways that I've experienced. So the first way is that they already know it. So some people have this innate knowing that I just know this is what I want to do, purpose driven, divine mission, whatever. You give it whatever title you want. So that's the first way. The second way, which I really like, is using a simple framework from the Japanese. So in Japan, they have a word called ikigai. And the word ikigai is a concept born off a tiny little island off Japan called Okinawa. And they live by this ikigai concept. What is the ikigai? Well, it means a reason for being, which is the direct translation into English. And it's the crosshairs of essentially 4 questions. So what do I love? What am I good at? What does the world need? And what can I be paid for? So being able to just do that exercise, answering those 4 questions and thinking, well, if I was to mold those 4 things together, what would that answer be? That gives a clue to do it. So that's one of the other ways. The other way is by identifying your means values. If people think about values, most people, when they hear values, they think of words written on a wall, which often reflect social idealisms more than values. Social idealisms like integrity, trust, loyalty, whereas a means value is the thing that you do that gives your life meaning. So one of the ways of identifying your means values is by using an acronym called STEM. So STEM. And the first way or the S in STEM stands for space. So reviewing your space, seeing what's in your spaces, and will start to give you an indication to what you value. You might remember an old TV show years ago called Through the Keyhole, where I can't remember the presenter's name, but they would go, well, who lives in a house like this? And you'd zoom in, you'd look round and you'd kind of see that there was footballs and football trophies and shirts. It'd give you an indication of who that person is, and you would guess who lives there based on what was in the house. So that's one of the things. The second is time. What do you fill your time doing? Third is energy. What do you do that gives you energy? And then third is money. What you spend your money on will be an indication of what you value and what's important to you. So even just looking behind you, I can see on the wall there's a whole bunch of pictures of you outside. You've got what looks like a road bike in behind you as well. So just even just seeing those things without seeing anything else, it's given me a glimpse into something that you probably value. Now you take that, and that anyone can put anything behind them. I'm not saying that's the case, but you look in multiple people's spaces, in their cars, in their homes, in their offices, it gives you an indication. And then, so yeah, space, time, energy, and money. So what do you spend your money on? So disposable income. So after you paid your house, your home, rent, whatever, then what else are you spending your money on will be an indication. So that's the third way. So first way is you already know it. Second way is the ikigai. Third guy is values. Fourth is by doing a life review. So a life review is, imagine an X and Y axis, and you start on the axis on the bottom from your earliest memory right up until the present day. And then on the axis going up the side, you've got sort of plus 10, in the middle 0, down to minus 10. And you plot your highest highs and your lowest lows. And then you end up with something that looks a little bit like a heartbeat. More often than not, it's going up and down, up and down. Very rarely is it just a line across the top or a line across the bottom. And we identify what the lowest lows were, what the highest highs were, and almost certainly there's a correlation, and that can be a glimpse into it. And then the fifth way, which is a way that is one of the ways that came to me after the way I'd been working with lots of people for many years on the other ways, was actually by simply asking one question, which is, if you had all of the money that you could ever possibly need, what would you want to do? And that in itself can be really quite revealing for some people, because so many people don't do the very thing that they would love to be doing because they haven't got the financial resource to be able to do so. And that can also be an indication. And the reason why I say that all of them create indications is because if you just look at any one on their own, you can kind of get false positives. So some people say, well, if I had all the money in the world, then what I would do is I would go and travel, and all I would do is I'd spend all of my time traveling. But that might be more of a fantasy than it is something that they would love to be doing. But the other ways of unpacking the North Star gives us more of an understanding of whether that is truly the case or not.
Yeah, that's nice. I like it. There's loads of I've heard of some of those before, and then haven't some of the other ones I haven't heard, because people do struggle with this, don't they? It's like, because we all have been sucked into doing something that we thought was going to be the right thing. I think most of us have anyway, and then realize it's not, and then it feels like everything's just a bit of a lie. And who the hell am I? Why am I here? I'm sure you come across that a lot.
Yeah, well, it's really interesting. So every single one of us have got a set of values that are as unique as the fingerprint on the end of our finger. And our values are in a hierarchy. So the thing that is our highest value is the thing that we build our identity around. So, for example, a mother who really values their child as the most valuable thing in their life will identify as a mother. Someone who also is a mother but really values business, when you ask them their identity, their number one value might be business. So therefore they would identify more as a business woman, for example. So these are things that are key. But what can happen is when we have perceived to have, so take one step back. So all values are born from a perception of a void. So if we perceive something to be missing, then we will pursue it and we will value it. We can also get to points in our lives where we have perceived to have filled that void, in which case that value then drops lower down, and then there's a rearrangement of value. So we can do that by design, or it can happen by default. Often in life, when people experience something, and I think this plays into the type of work that you do with people, Ben, is that when people have an experience that is a significant emotional event, that will often alter their values. So, for example, if someone's had really bad news about their health, it will alter their values. If they've had really bad news about a family member, it will alter their values. If they have had an accident, it will alter their values. And almost always, when people are experiencing a significant emotional event in the sense that they feel really rocked by something, it's because of almost always a loss of identity. So they now perceive they can't do the very thing that they're able to do previously. Mm-hmm. And that is the thing that creates that challenge for people. So being able to create a new identity via design is super, super helpful, because then people don't just drift into this loss of identity by default.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. Which is why I think initiation is so important. Because I think initiation would have been about understanding, like, who are you beyond being a mother, or beyond being a business person, or beyond, I was in the military. So a lot of people struggle with, when they come out of the military, like, who am I? I was a soldier. Now I'm not a soldier.
Exactly, which is loss of identity. So all of a sudden, people have had these and you can apply this for anything. If you are in a relationship and you break up, you're no longer the boyfriend or the girlfriend. It's a loss of identity. If you're a mother or father and you lose a loved one because they have sadly died, you are no longer the mother or the father to that person. If you have a business and that business goes pop, you're no longer the business owner. It's a loss of identity. They're all loss of identities. And the ability to recreate ourselves or redefine ourselves is a skill that most people don't have, but it's hugely valuable in life, because the strongest force in the human persona is to stay aligned with our identity. And the two most powerful words in the English language are I am. And anything you say I am to, you are. And being able to define that, sit down, blank piece of paper, you ask most people, who are you? They will say, my name is Will, or my name is Ben. Whereas, no, well, that's your name. Who are you? And then you go a layer deeper than that, and it's eye-opening.
Yeah. That's good. I've said that many times. The two most powerful languages. Good. So where did you, what's been the biggest identity shifts that you've had to make? And was it difficult? When did you come to realize these things?
What's been the biggest I've had to make?
Like the most challenging ones.
So I'll share, rather than challenging, I'll share the opposite. I'll share one of the most expansive, because this might be interesting. So when I was younger, when I was in my early teens, I was, some people might say, a bit of a Dell boy. I was buying and selling and ducking and diving and doing whatever I could to make money. And that was just something I did. Then I got into finance, and I was a broker, and I lived that life and all of the things that came with, I suppose, the label of being a broker. Then I left, set up the renewable energy business. That didn't work out. And then I set up the coaching business. And the term the title I gave myself, that I printed on my cards and I referred to myself as, was mindset strategist. So for 5 or so years, that was what I did. And anything else that was presented to me that didn't fit into me being in that box of being a mindset strategist, I didn't do. And by not doing those things, there were so many opportunities that I passed up. Whereas when I realized this was the case, and I actually said, no, I'm Will Polston, the entrepreneur. I'm Will Polston, the business strategist. I'm Will Polston, the performance coach. Having the entrepreneur title or identity that I gave myself again, all of a sudden meant that, yeah, I would start looking at other opportunities in mushroom businesses, starting other different businesses that I've had, because I believe that whatever you say you are, you do. So, for example, if you have the idea, in order for you to be a swimmer has to swim.
So, yeah,
If you want to be a runner has to run. If you want to be a business owner, a business has to own a business, right? So what I did by giving myself that title, it opened me up to being able to do things. I suppose a challenge would be that I actually penned myself in, I caged myself in by giving myself what you might say is a restrictive identity. And then it was when I opened that up again, then I started to look at other opportunities. And then those opportunities were always there, but I wasn't opening myself up to those opportunities because of how I was perceiving who I was at that time.
is that such a bad thing? Because you would have really, I imagine you would have really honed your craft in that time as a mindset strategist coach.
Great question. Is it a bad thing? To be sort of philosophical around it, there's no such thing as good or bad. It's all a matter of perspective. I suppose what it really boiled down to is ultimately what did I want and was I congruent? When I'm working with people, we build out their North Star. So what's the mission? But then we build out what I call a North Star trajectory, which is like a roadmap, if you like, of what does life look like ultimately 50 years out, 20 years out, 10 years out, etc., etc. So many people are experiencing negative emotions that they don't want to be feeling and not living like how they want to be living it on a daily basis, because the gap of where they perceive they are and where they want to go is not in alignment. So there's this incongruence. I call it the rift. The rift is if you know you're in the rift, if you're experiencing negative emotions, stress, overwhelm, frustration, etc., because it's either you need to think differently or act differently. So in my instance, if I then looked at where I wanted to be 3 years out, 5 years out, and even arguably probably at that point 1 year out, there were a number of things that I wasn't doing that I wanted to be doing in order to be, for me to truly be congruent, if I was being really honest with myself. But in answer to your question, did it help me hone my skill and double down and do all of those things? Yeah, absolutely. Of course it did.
Yeah, because I think that I was just thinking that one of the things that I see a lot of people struggle with is almost too many options, too many opportunities, and chopping and changing what they're doing. Maybe that's because they don't have their North Star.
Yeah, and often it is, in my experience, because I believe that you can do anything and you can have everything, just not all at once. So then if we start putting it in like what's a now thing and what's a not now thing in its most simple form, and I think so for me, the future's ahead of me. So when I think of like the certain things that I want to be, do, or have in my life, and I kind of slot them into the timeframes that I want to have them, it's not everything is now and everything's kind of on a horizontal plane from left to right for me, which for me feels really overwhelming. But if I can kind of see it that it's all in this path ahead of me, and then when I get to certain points, that's when I start that next phase of the journey, or that's when I start doing those things, then that for me enables me to be able to move forward with focus and still strive towards what I want to be doing and having, without the need of feeling like I'm missing out and I need to be doing it right now.
So what's your North Star?
To empower people to unlock the next level of potential, performance and purpose, so it benefits them, their family, their friends, their community, society, humanity.
And do you have like a grand, is that an ambition, or is that just the kind of guiding principle that you...
Is it an ambition? I suppose it is an ambition. The reason, and I'm quite intentional with using the term North Star, because lots of people talk about a North Star and they make reference to it as a goal that they achieve. So my whole thing is that you never actually achieve it. So empowering people, I haven't said I want it to be 10 people or 100 people or 1 million people, or I used to. And then one day I just asked myself the question, well, what would I do if I got to 1 million people? Well, it would then become 2 million or 10 million. So actually the number's irrelevant. Is completely irrelevant. It's about, am I doing it? And am I doing it in a way that's aligned with my personal values? And if I'm doing that, then it's empowering me and making a difference and creating win-win. So yeah, I think that's what does that look like if we fast forward it out 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? It's just consistently more of the same in a way that creates benefit to others and creates a benefit to me. So I think it was Stephen Covey who spoke about the concept of win-win, or you might call it fair exchange. So one of my daily affirmations is I'm focused on fair exchange. With fair exchange, everyone wins. So how do I make sure that other people are benefiting and I'm benefiting, not so that it's a win-lose or a lose-win or a lose-lose? And that's a key part of making it sustainable for me as well.
Yeah, nice. And what's your sort of vehicle to be doing that? Obviously, you've got your book and you've got your coaching practice.
Yeah. So the coaching business has a range of different services. So we've got Inner Circle, Mastermind, Legacy. They're different memberships that we have. Then I think about other businesses that I've been involved with. So even people used to say, well, what on earth has having a mushroom business got to do with wanting to have an impact on people? Well, the specific types of mushrooms that we used to grow, sell functional mushrooms. So, for example, the first product we had was lion's mane, better focus, better memory, better mood. Well, that was beneficial to the people that I wanted to help, and we were doing that then. I also then bought a marketing franchise. People were saying, well, what on earth has a marketing franchise got to do with that big mission? Well, one of my longer term goals is that I grew up playing ice hockey. I want to build a 6,000 seater ice arena here in Essex, and I want to win the Elite League playoffs, which is the equivalent of the sort of winning the Champions League, if you like, in football. But I want to do it with more homegrown players than any other club in history. Why? Because when I was younger, I loved playing ice hockey, but there wasn't a ladder, there wasn't a roadmap to take it all the way to the top of the game. So I want to be able to give my yesteryear self, if you like, that ability to be able to climb that whole way up. So it's not just about having the team and winning for the sake of winning. It's about winning, but doing it with more homegrown talent. In order for me to do that, I need to be able to build the arena. In order for me to build the arena, I've got to have great sponsorships. The idea of having a local business, it was a franchise called the Best of Chelmsford, which is what I acquired, enabled me to be able to build those relationships when that opportunity was to arise, or I was to make that opportunity happen. I already had resources available to be able to do that. So that's kind of examples of how does everything fold into the longer term goal of things.
Nice. So you want to build you want to build an ice hockey ring and then build the team.
Yeah. So in order to be able to win, and it's all intentional. So the Elite League is sort of the equivalent of the Premiership in football. And in order to be able to properly compete, you've got to be able to have budget. In order to be able to have budget, you've got to be able to have a fan base. In order to be able to have a fan base, you've got to be able to get them in the rink to be able to watch. Even that actually is strictly not true, and something I don't want to talk about publicly, because there's something that I perceive as a way of being able to do it without necessarily having a huge rink, but that's a conversation for another day. The whole concept of that would mean that for us to be able to do it with more homegrown talent, we've got to be able to produce ways of making that work and funding that, essentially. And that comes back down to the people that would be spectating and sponsoring. Of course, if you've got more people coming into the rink, it means you get more sponsorship. You get more sponsorship, you've got more budget, and so on and so forth.
Yeah. So how far are you off getting the ring?
So far, I don't own the team currently, so that would be the next thing. But for me, it's not so much about having the ring. That believe it or not, I think it's going to be one of the easier parts.
But yeah,
the stage now is taking over the team from the existing owner. But yeah, that's all part of the plan.
Wow, exciting stuff.
But that for me is a one day thing. It's not something I'm busting my balls to be able to make happen this year. But whether it's in 2 years or whether it's in 5 years or even 10 years, then whenever that starts, that's great. I know that when that happens, it will be a 15-year, realistically a minimum of 15-year journey to get to that point, but it will happen.
Nice. Good. Okay. What are you most proud of in your life so far?
What am I most proud of? So I battle with this question, and the reason being, Ben, is because I work really hard to not be proud. And the reason for that is because I believe that being in pride is to be out of equilibrium. And the opposite of pride is shame. And the lowest form of energy is shame. So I work really hard to attempt, and I'm not perfect at it, but I work really hard to try and keep myself humble, in the sense of, there's a saying, the pride before the fall. So what do I do? And I appreciate it, for some people it can be semantics and go, well, okay, well, it's a bit deep. But yeah, so there's that as a component. But the thing that I'm, I suppose, most inspired by, and the thing that I feel content with, is the fact that I've taken the risks and I've gone on the journey that I know to be true to me, when I didn't know how. I didn't know the answers. I didn't know how it was going to work. I just had a lot of inspiration. I had a vision, and I took the leap of faith. And I think for me, that was people talk about sort of the blue pill, red pill type moment. And being able to take that leap of faith and do that thing is something that took me on a journey that many don't go on. But having done that and dealt with I suppose it's the typical hero's journey, isn't it? You know, the Joseph Campbell's hero journey. You step out, you go into the unknown, you have all the challenges, but those challenges ultimately have shaped me to be the person I am today, the good, the bad, and the indifferent.
And so your the resistance around the word pride was to do with not being too, I suppose, egotistical.
So to break it down, is that we can, and it all kind of links back to values again. But when we perceive that we have done something that is more positive than negative for ourselves, we're in pride. When we perceive that we have done something more negative than positive for ourselves, we're in shame. Then we go a layer out, and then when we perceive that someone has done something more positive than negative, we are in infatuation. So we get infatuated with that person. Or when we perceive that that person has done something more negative than positive, or is being more negative or positive, then we resent them. So they're the different levels. And the true mastery in life, I believe, is the ability to see that there is no good, there is no bad. It's all a matter of perspective. And in psychology, obviously, Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud, two very, very well-known psychologists, but the lesser-known sort of key psychologist of his time is Alfred Adler. And Adler spoke about, well, he created and developed Adlerian psychology, which all links back to meaning and having a telos, or having a North Star, as I would call it, and living to that. So then we can come from the place of nothing is good, nothing is bad, nothing's in the way, it's just on the way. And when we operate from that perspective, there's less suffering, and we're seeing that we can, as long as we stay congruent, so we stay aligned to our values, we get to experience life how the majority of us want to be experiencing life, as opposed to how the majority are living life. So hopefully it gives a little bit more context to the thing around pride.
Yeah, I think so. So my understanding of what you just said is basically to not get too too much. Don't let it go to your head too much.
Yeah, I suppose go to your head to the kind of So the yes is the short answer, but it's perceiving that you've done more positive than negative for yourself. So whatever the thing is, staying in balance, staying in equilibrium, whatever the thing is, you name anything, is that by being able to. So a mentor of mine has a saying, which is, true wisdom is the instantaneous recognition that a crisis and a blessing are the same thing, something to that effect. And that is the ability to see both sides in any given moment. Every single one of us then have had a situation whereby we've had something happen, and we look back years later, decades later, months later, sometimes even minutes later, and the thing that we thought was really, really bad actually was the best thing that ever happened for us. And vice versa. People think that time is a healer. Time isn't a healer. It's never, ever, ever, ever about time. It's always about perspective. And the difference is most people don't have the tools to be able to gain the perspective strategically. So they have to go through time in order to gain the perspective. But the situations that we perceive as really difficult, really hard, not how we want them to be, if we can see the benefits in both, in any given moment, we dissolve the emotional charge and we get to be able to live poised, present, content, which I'm not perfect at. I'm not saying that I do it every single minute of every single day. I've constantly got new levels. New levels bring new devils. You know, we're constantly working through this. But I believe certainly attempting to live like that is far more beneficial than trying to live a life of trying to strive for one-sided ideals. So I think of it a bit like imagine a wrecking ball hanging on a crane. If that the more we push to have life always positive, the more negativity we attract. And for as long as we just keep doing that, we've got this massive big wrecking ball swinging from left to right. But if we follow the chain of the wrecking ball to the point of the top of the crane, that point never moves. And that for me comes with high level thinking. And that's the point that enables us to see things as not good, not bad, not positive, not negative, not happy, not sad, not in pride or in shame, but just seeing them for what they are, not for what we think that they are.
Yeah. They're just, yeah, I get what you're saying. So it's kind of like seeing both sides of the coin, essentially.
Exactly that. Exactly that. Yeah.
Yeah. But then I think also of most entrepreneurs tend to not give themselves very much credit for the things they have achieved. And they don't. I think a feeling of pride is useful.
So I agree that the terminology that I use, which is kind of semantics, is for most entrepreneurs. And we met at a Dan Sullivan event from memory, right? So Dan Sullivan wrote a book called The Gap and the Gain. He wrote it with Dr. Benjamin Hardy. I don't know if you've read the book at all, but most people are focused on the gap from where they are to where they want to be, as opposed to recognizing what they've done. So that in itself is out of balance. They're focused on all the things they haven't got versus the things they have got. Whereas when you can focus on both in equal measure, happy days. It's not about just focusing on the things that you've got and never striving for anything more. It's about seeing both in equal measure. So to your point about most people don't acknowledge the things that they have done. I mean, I do an audit. So I have a resource called the annual self-assessment. So Napoleon Hill used to do a 28 question questionnaire, and it's called the annual self-assessment. And I took those 28 questions. I did it for years. And I've probably 5, 6, 7, 8 years, exactly those 28 questions. And over time, I've added in some of my own. I think mine now it was 43. Then I cut a few questions away. But one of the first things that I do is the first question is pretty much what are all of the things that I've experienced in the previous year? And one of the favorite things I love to do, I personally do it by going back through my phone, starting on the 1st of January, going right to the end of the year, and looking at all of the moments that I've had in any given year to remind myself. Because typically as an entrepreneur, we generally are more forward focused and future focused than we are past. So having that experience once a year to check in is hugely valuable. But I don't just do it once a year. I also have a process where we update our North Star trajectory on a weekly basis. I use a very simple system. I call it the traffic light system: green if it's done, amber if it's in progress, red if it's not started. And literally will highlight the things that I've done in any given month that I want to achieve green as an acknowledgement to myself of the things that I've done. So yeah, I completely agree. People, or a lot of entrepreneurs generally, will be more focused on the things that they haven't done and what's still to come, as opposed to checking in. But yeah, it's just trying to get the balance of both.
Do you think that feeds into the identity then as well? So I've sort of noticed that your identity can almost be like, oh, I'm in the gap. Does that make sense?
Does it feed into the identity? What are you thinking? What do you mean?
I'm just thinking there's a lot of, and I think me as well. Like I've been in that position where, because I've always been in the gap, to use this gap and the gain terminology. I sort of assume the identity of somebody who's just always in the gap, and I don't ever have the pride. I don't ever have the gain, or haven't in the past so much. And so my identity is somebody who is just overwhelmed, gets all the emotions from being in the gap, and none of the emotional, the useful stuff from being in the gain.
If that is someone's identity, then yeah, that would be it. But what I think anyone would be wise to do is, if that is the case, is to check in, acknowledge the wins along the way, for sure, because then that's going to help create the balance and build up that bank of all of the things that have been accomplished and have been achieved that will help balance that out.
Reinforce it. Yeah, cool. Nice. Okay, what are you most excited about in the next year or so, apart from your ice hockey?
Yeah. So I became a dad for the first time in September last year. So He's
Nice.
now really got a personality, so seeing that part play out is really cool. And growth, more of the same. I think I've spent 10 years in this business building a great foundation, and being able to build on from where we're going and what we're doing and finding our lane is definitely something that excites me. And more experiences. There's some cool stuff that I've had that I've wanted to achieve for a long time that I've achieved this year. One of those was getting my pilot's license. So being able to go out and have those kind of experiences and do those things is, yeah, it's exciting for sure.
How's the identity? I've got a 2-year-old boy and 6 weeks now. And,
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. And how was the identity change of becoming a father?
So we had a really rocky start. It was something that I probably didn't acknowledge as much as I could have, because I think we were thrown into fight or flight and were there for many months. I think that, I think for me now, does it help put more things into perspective? Yes. Has it created a shift? Yes, it has. But equally, what I will say, and I've said previously, is that for me, still going out and working and everything, is that not that much has changed. For my partner, on the other hand, her life has really, really changed because she's been at home with him every day for the last 7 months. So not a huge amount has changed for me, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a fun, challenging but fun. You likely to have a second one, do you think?
I'd like to.
Cheers, Will. All right. Well, thanks for your time. And how do people find out more about you and your work?
If they want to find out more, the easiest place to go is willpolston.com. You can find out about the book. You can find out about the podcast, various different resources. Feel free to then come and connect me on any social platform, which you can access via the website as well, just Will Polston.
All right. Thank you for your time. Cheers, Will.
Pleasure. Thanks, Ben. Take care.